This is the house I moved into when I was 10 years old. Um, it's the house I lived in the longest, I guess, but I don't feel like I grew up here because when I was younger, I lived in an apartment in DC where I shared a room with my brother, and then a house on Ken Island, and this was considered the big house. I talk about this house in the poem called Acceptance. So as I talk about in that poem, this house is in a country club community in Ken Island. My parents bought it when they were like just a few years older than I am now, which is just insane to me. It's a property that overlooks the water. I'll show you in a minute, on the Chesapeake Bay. We're the only, I think, house that's right on the water that doesn't own a boat or have a dock, because my parents were never home. They were always working, right, to pay for it. And I was never home. I was in middle school and high school, and I was really kind of in that type A place at the time. So I was, trying to do after school activities and do sports, even though I hated team sports. And then, later in high school, I was going out and wanting to be with my friends. This is in my bedroom here, is the first place I had sex. Pretty horrible experience. Yeah. A guy came in the middle of the night, friends with my best friend's boyfriend. So that's something I'm proud of. And that will probably come up later when I talk more about my relationships with men, and how part of this trip to Korea is a healing of the masculine within me. After I graduated from college, so I moved to Korea, but before I did that, there was a summer where I lived here with my parents to help them at this business they had. And I thought at the time, oh, this will be the last time I live with my parents, I'll have like a summer with them and help them out at the store, and it'll just be this like peaceful, sweet family time before I go. Well, it was horrible. That store was like one of the worst stores we've ever had, very difficult to run and manage. And the more I was there, the more I realized like it was going to be really hard for my parents without my help. So it was hard for me to leave because of that. And then we found out that my father was having an affair, and my mom didn't want anyone to know. So it was a secret in my family, and so that was very difficult, because we all like went to work and saw relatives and like acted like nothing was wrong, but it was horrible. And so this house has like those memories, in it. And then I left for Korea a few months later than I had planned, and it was hard again for me to leave. I was worried about my mom and both my parents with the store, and I went to Korea like right before my birthday and Christmas and Thanksgiving, and I was leaving a boyfriend, and when I left, like my mom, it was a very lonely time for her. It's this big house. My brother was gone, I was gone, and my parents did not have a happy relationship. So there was like a lot of sadness here. And this house, they bought it, thinking that they were going to retire in it. It was like, the house on the water. It was, my dad designed it. They bought all this like really nice furniture. They made custom curtains, and it was like, and quickly, there was that kind of the sad events and just life. And then also they were realizing that it's like kind of far from far from things. Like my mom at the time she was running two businesses in DC, so she was driving like more than 3 hours every single day. And on the Eastern Shore, it's kind of we eat Korean food. There's no Korean grocery stores here. All their friends lived in like Baltimore and in the city, so it just my mom was tired of driving after like 10 years of doing that in DC, and so she was like, I don't want to be older and have to like drive an hour just to like see someone or go get some groceries. So they were feeling like it was, and the fact it felt too big for them. But they didn't totally give up on that dream, because it was hard for them to let go. It was like a symbol of all of their hard work, and I think something nice to kind of show off, like, yeah, a symbol, just a symbol. So they moved, they bought like really small apartments in the Western Shore. They started closer to the businesses they were running, and thinking, oh well, whenever that business is complete, they'll move back and retire and live in this house. And maybe this sounds familiar to you, right? It's like we think that we're gonna just like have this plan and stop working one day, and it just doesn't happen. Like, so my parents, they would be like, well, after this store, but then it would be successful, they would sell it, and then find another store, and then they would do that one, and it was like this house never, it just stopped being lived in. It became like a second home that wasn't being used, and then it became like this kind of like a money sucking thing, and something that was like a hassle, because then when they would come, it would be kind of like stuffy because no one was living here, and they'd have to like clean it. It's on the water, so it needs to be taken care of, and it just became a hassle. So, when I came back from Korea, I lived here for a while. I moved around the country, but a lot of times I would come back. And every time I came back, it would kind of be like my job to, I just was like, we need to sell this. It's hard and it's sad to let it go, but it doesn't look like you guys are ever really going to come back and live here. Your life is on the Western Shore, the whole thing with the driving. So, and I used to sell real estate. So I was like, okay, we're going to clean it up and we're going to let it go, and then you guys will feel more settled. So it was a lot of work for me, but yeah, I would kind of stay here part-time, clean it up, and it was good for me because I would have space, and not just be living with my parents, but I would also be with them, and back and forth. So it was unsettling for me too, because it wasn't like, this is not my house, it's not my space, and yet it felt like my responsibility to take care of it, and I was like living with my parents part-time, and obviously the kind of tension that comes with that. So I did that for so this last few years, that's what I've been doing, and I it I realized that every time I would get it ready to put on the market, something like a catastrophe would happen. Like one time, there was a flood, and we had to redo all of the floors. And I came to like relax here, and I found the whole kitchen flooded, and so I had to, yep, call people and get contractors and fix that. When that got fixed and finally was like, okay, we're gonna put it on the market, it was ready to go, and then the realtor calls me and says, do you know you have a hole in the ceiling? So I ran down, and there was this hole in the ceiling that had happened from like another, actually I think another leak from like the AC, or, and after like the third time something like this happened, I was like, what is the fucking message here? And my dad would joke around that, like, it's funny that I seem to be around every time there's like a catastrophe, and like I end up taking care of it. Even though I'm not like consistently here. I knew I had this pattern of, you know, doing my thing, usually living far away, and then kind of having these periods where I would come back to my parents and like live with them for like 6 months or a year before moving away again. And I really felt that this time that I came back, I wasn't meant to leave again until something was totally resolved or healed with my family. And so when all of these kind of catastrophes were happening in the house, I really felt like it was a message to, like, one, that there was cleansing that needed to happen, and two, that there was some attention to be paid, and not just, not just at a material level, like cleaning it and getting it ready to go on the market. So I started to come to the house and see it as a healing. Like, I would mindfully go through my things and the things here, and I realized, I was spending more time actually just being with the house than I had in like all the years combined that I actually lived here. I lived here for years in middle school and high school, but I never really appreciated the house. I felt, yeah, I'd rather just be out with friends, or when I was here, I felt depressed and bored, and I didn't feel close to my parents. Like, it doesn't have fond memories for me the way like a really our small cozy apartment in DC did, or the house I grew up in when I was younger. It never had a quality of feeling like loving or warm. It felt like fancy, and yeah. So one day, pretty recently, last year, it hit me that, really actually enjoying this house and not seeing it as something to like, drive to and like clean up and, hope things don't go wrong and like want to get rid of. Instead of that, I realized that it was a metaphor for my body, the way I've been treating my body. Like, just, I don't pay attention to my body, or unless it's complaining, or, and otherwise I'm just like, yeah, I just push it, and I don't even notice it. And it's like, I'm blessed with this healthy, beautiful body, and it's a gift, and I just hadn't been really enjoying my life within it. And so I started to think, what if I treated this home like it was a temple, and saw it as a way to be more mindful of my own body. And then it occurred to me, I was reading a book called The Sophia Code, which highlights 7 different goddesses and their attributes which live within us all. And I started to walk through each room and just suddenly felt like, wait, these rooms actually correspond with these goddesses. And then I realized, oh, this whole home is a temple, and each room is a temple dedicated to the goddess. So this used to be the ballroom. My parents are great dancers, and my dad loves to sing, and so they would have parties here, bar room / ballroom. It actually used to have a dance floor, but a hardwood dance floor, but we took it out and put new carpet in. But yeah, it's this is a view of the water, and this is the Temple of Hathor. This is the background of that they put up. Yeah, black leather, pretty like 80s. It's 20 years old now. And this used to be the guest room, and this became the Temple of Guan Yin. And it was like I could actually feel the energy of each goddess in each room. And it was like they were transforming the space, and they would have messages for me. This used to be my brother's room. This is a piece of Korean furniture that my grandmother sailed to the States with